Did the Rams try to redo Matthew Stafford's contract, but he said no? Is he a top 10 quarterback? And the most important Rams heading into the 2023 season? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your two-time Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for bringing Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. We're also available on YouTube, so if you want to check out the video version of the show, find us on YouTube. Just past 7K subscribers, trying to get to 8K, so hit that subscribe button and let us know. Do you believe the Rams tried to redo Matthew Stafford's contract? My name is Doug McKay. My friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, the Lakers for SI, the Dodgers for Dodgers Nation. Now I'm covering the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio network, ESPN 710 LA. He's entered his 8th season covering the team, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on Twitter at Travis Rogers. Now, on today's show, we continue our countdown of the most important Rams heading into the 2023 season. Where did ESPN rank Stafford in their top 10 quarterbacks list? And did the Rams try to redo Stafford's contract and he was unwilling? That's coming up. But first, Travis, Aaron Donald, he's back in the 99 club. Aaron Donald back in that 99 club. Overall, Madden, he passes, set a record here. He ends up breaking the record a 7th time, surpassing Peyton Manning. So, hey, get a shout out to our boy AD.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, if anybody has earned it, it's certainly him. That from the moment he showed up here in town, from before he even got here, when he was still in St. Louis, he has been the baddest man on this team, and he continues to be. Good for him.
AD doing big things. This all cup was a 96. For me, when it comes to these Madden ratings, I'm like, I don't care. Then how was he only a 96? And I kind of lose it for no reason whatsoever. But we got to get back into these rumors about Matthew Stafford and Colin Cowherd on his radio show, The Herd, last week. He said that sources told him that the Rams tried to redo Matthew Stafford's contract earlier this year, but that he was unwilling to do it. He refused to budge. Colin said, I was told by a source I trust that they wanted to redo his contract. He wasn't interested. It limits what they can do, and they were frustrated with him. And I could see them next year taking a quarterback. So first, my reaction to this is, man, we need to get training camp going, but still very interesting that he was unwilling to budge, and they were trying to redo his deal.
Yeah, I think if you take everything that we've heard about Matthew Stafford, his contract, the team's, desire to at least listen to offers for maybe a trade, there maybe a little bit more than just listening. Maybe they were actively soliciting offers. Maybe they were trying to trade him. I don't know exactly where in the spectrum of those things it lands for sure, but it does sound like there was a lot of interest in at least exploring what they may be able to do at that position that doesn't involve Matthew Stafford. I think that they're entirely fine having him here. Obviously, they signed him to that deal. They knew that this was something that was probably more likely than not to happen, where they're going to have to pay him a huge amount of money towards the end of his career. But I think that if you kind of take that 30,000-foot view to what this means is the Rams are getting ready for life after Matthew Stafford. They're trying to find a way to whether it's to move him to another team, whether to restructure his money so maybe he's more attractive to another team. They are getting ready for what this football team looks like when number 9 is not behind center. Not that they're not excited to have him here right now, but what comes next, that's something that I think is near the top of their to-do list in the Rams organization.
Yeah, I think this is an organization. They're always thinking in the future, trying to play some 4D chess. But at the same token, hey, they made their bed with Matthew Stafford. Yep. You kind of have to lay it at this point. That's just the reality of the situation. And he can still be a very productive quarterback. He can still help them win in 24. And beyond that, if he is able to stay healthy, 23, we'll see what happens. But I think it's important to note that if they wanted to just restructure his deal, they don't have to negotiate with him. They don't have to get his permission for that. They want to do that. They can just turn his base salary into bonus money, push that salary cap commitment into the future, here, but Cowherd claims that they asked him to redo his deal, which can indicate a multitude of different possibilities. A, could have asked Stafford to take a pay cut. Now, Stafford's $20 million salary cap in 23 is manageable, but that deal, it makes it very difficult to release him or trade him. So it looks to be like they went to Stafford and saying, can you take a pay cut? If I'm Matthew Stafford, I'm living by the Pirates rule. Take all you can and give nothing back.
Yeah, no, look, I really want to meet the guy that's excited to take less money for no reason, right? Like, I mean, it just, and I can hear people, well, there is a reason. They can spend the money. No. You said you're going to pay me this. That's what I get. We're done. Like, it's not super complicated. We came to, I will work for you for this long, for this amount of money. That's what I expect. And if you want to cut me, that's fine, but I'm going to get my money. If you want to move on to me, that's fine, but I'm going to get my money. I don't know if this makes me a bad fan. I don't know if this makes me just a bad guy in general, but this is their livelihood. I don't care. And I know the numbers are almost unfathomably high when it comes to the dollars, but this is what they do for a living. So somebody comes to you and asks you to do your job for less. I would imagine that most of us would be saying, no, I don't think I really want to do that. So I have absolutely no problem with Matthew Stafford saying no to these things. I think what comes along is, though, all right, then we got to do something else over here. We got to do something else over there. That these are the things that kind of start to trickle down the mountain when somebody's making that much money. But I have absolutely no problem at all with Matthew Stafford saying no to these things. That I would have said no to. That's how I roll. That's how he rolls, and I get it.
Exactly. Ask anyone out there, like you said, to take less money, especially after the beating he took last season. I think it's a bad time to go to someone and say, hey, take some less money after you had concussions, a spinal cord contusion, you consider retirement, right? So really the wrong time to ask.
Well, you're right for all the physical reasons you mentioned and everything that could happen down the line. Here's the other thing. He's been terrific for them, right? I understand that last year was a busted season and nothing really worked well, but and I know that he didn't look great, but would anybody have looked great under that set of circumstances? Would anybody have thrived under a makeshift offensive line, a running back that wasn't ready to go, your wide receiver core, your number 2 guy in Allen Robinson being a complete bust, that it just didn't work? When you've given him the tools, he went 1 for 1. He showed up. He won the Super Bowl because of him. So I have nothing but high praise for Matthew Stafford. If they couldn't work out something economically, that's fine. They'll work it out eventually. They'll move on to somebody else eventually. But I have nothing but the highest praise for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said because, look, it's not like they did not accomplish the mission. It'd be one thing if they traded for him. He wasn't good. He threw 50 touchdowns regular season and playoffs combined. He was a top 5 elite quarterback when they had a serviceable to really good offensive line. Last year, they were atrocious, and he struggled. They couldn't protect him. But at the end of the day, when they made the decision to trade Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, which, by the way, like I said, led to a Super Bowl in year 1, mission accomplished, they knew they were going to have to give Stafford that contract because, A, the dead cap hit they took when they traded Goff, that was going to be a factor in that. And then Goff was still under contract for multiple seasons. So they knew that they were going to face some cap pressure with that. And it sneed them off, and the powers that be, their hands were tied just a little bit, and they knew the impact that was going to have. They were going to have to give Stafford that deal. You can't sell the cow and drink the milk.
Yeah, no, look, this is not a Russell Wilson situation where you mortgaged your entire future for the guy that you thought was going to be the difference between you being a middle of the road team and maybe a high level playoff team. And then, halfway through the season, it's like, this guy's shot. He's washed. He can't do it anymore. High-fiving invisible fans. This isn't Russell Wilson. He showed up. You spent a lot of capital to get him. You paid him a lot of money. You won. You won the Super Bowl. The next year, the whole thing blew up. It wasn't just because of him. It was because of everything not working. Look, they've got, this is the league is this. Head coach, quarterback, be able to protect the quarterback, be able to get to the quarterback. They have the 2 most important things, the head coach and the quarterback. Those 2 guys make a lot of money. They should make a lot of money. Now they got to figure out everything else.
Absolutely. And for people out there saying, oh, why don't they just trade Stafford? Hey, maybe that would make some sense. No, it actually wouldn't. They would save some money now in the interim, but that would hurt their salary cap situation in 2024. His cap hit in 24 is $49.5 million. It's $50.5 million in 2025. Without getting into the nitty gritty of his contract long term, they actually did some very interesting things by giving him that longer contract to kind of prorate that bonus over more seasons and save some money. But the question I have is, how did this impact the Jalen Ramsey trade and some of the other moves they made? I mean, Does it feel like a situation too where they went to Stafford, tried to redo that deal, and then after that, then you start to sell out those pieces? In my opinion, it could have been a factor.
Yeah, sure. Look, all these pieces connect to one another, right? You have a finite amount of money, at least to a degree. You can kind of work these things. I always go back to what my guy Keyshawn Johnson says, who, look, if I want to pay you, I can find a way to pay you no matter what the salary cap may say. But I think you're right. When you're not necessarily in a win now mode, and I don't think that the Rams are in a win now mode. I think they're in a let's see what this looks like and figure it out from their mode. And all of a sudden, you've got all this money tied up over here, and maybe I don't want to tie up more over there. Then maybe Jalen Ramsey is in Miami. Maybe Bobby Wagner is cut. Maybe Allen Robinson is released. All of these things that have happened, maybe they do connect, and that's fine. That's the life in the NFL, and the quarterback is the most important piece, and they still have the quarterback.
100%. I will add before we head to our next segment that Breer did point out that the Rams didn't necessarily shop Matthew Stafford on the trade market, but they were exploring all possibilities to address critical salary cap problems. So it seems to me like they really knew that would have been a bad move. But coming up in our next segment, did Matthew Stafford make ESPN's list of top 10 quarterbacks? Where did he rank? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
All right, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 that you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, that's secure, and that is super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Go look at some of those Ohtani future odds on MVP. Maybe a little Mookie action right now. He is absolutely unconscious. All sorts of opportunities for you right there. And there is no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official partner of Major League Baseball. Go put that FanDuel app on your phone.
And we're off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special shout out to our everyday listeners. We appreciate you. And you can be an everyday listener too. Join the club. Membership is free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. But Travis, here in our second segment, ESPN, they released their list of their top 10 quarterbacks. It was a list that was voted on by coaches, executives, and scouts. And we've seen Matthew Stafford omitted in some of these top 10 lists, but not this one. Matthew Stafford comes in at number 10. The list goes Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Rodgers, Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott that doesn't even know how much time is on the clock there, and then Stafford coming in at number 10. So how they really want to start this is, look, first takeaways for me, Travis, he ranks ahead of Kirk Cousins, Goff, Geno Smith, Tua. If you look at the NFC, he's right there at the top as far as how these other guys are ranked.
Yeah, I think you saw the same thing that I did, D-Mac. The thing that jumped out at me more than anything was that of these top 10, 7 of them are AFC quarterbacks, right? There's only 3 guys from the NFC on this entire list, with Jalen Hurts, which makes a ton of sense. He's looked absolutely great. And Dak Prescott, as you mentioned, I would love for somebody somewhere to explain to me how Dak Prescott is on any of these lists. Show me the time where Dak Prescott did something that was like, wow, I haven't seen that before. Wow, Dak Prescott just won his team. That this is a guy that star on the side of his helmet is carrying so much weight for these things. If you said to me, we're going to go play a football game today, you got a draft pick of Dak Prescott or Matthew Stafford, I don't know anybody that's picking Dak Prescott in that moment. I just don't think that person exists. I think it's completely overblown. I think Matthew Stafford landed about where he should. I think he's probably somewhere towards the end of the top 10. It's just that Dak Prescott on that list makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the first thing that kind of had me steaming a little bit. Dak Prescott, he doesn't even know how much time is on the clock. I laugh every single time I watch the highlights of that wild card game. We got 14 seconds left. He's going up there. The thing that makes me laugh the most, Travis, is when the offensive line grabs the ball and starts to hike it as if the umpire, as if the ref doesn't have to be a part of the process there, right? And you hear Tony Romo, and he's like, oh, this is a part of the plan. Oh, it's part of the plan. And then he freaks out. It's like, oh, my gosh. So, yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, Dak Prescott's a guy that relies on weapons and offensive line. If one thing's not going right, it's rarely you're going to see him being productive. And we're talking about a guy that has been atrocious for the most part in the playoffs, whereas Matthew Stafford, he was fantastic. He led his team to a Super Bowl with a no-look pass on a game-winning drive. So I think really this comes down to the fact that it shows me that you look at him in the other list, he's not in the top 10. This list, it tells me that they're saying that, hey, maybe he's 10 right now, but we don't know if he's 100% healthy. Because if he's 100% healthy, hey, there's not a lot of guys on this list I would take over him. A lot of guys that might be ascending and might be going into the primes of their career. But Stafford, if he's 100% healthy and you guarantee me that health, hey, I'm taking him ahead pretty much all these guys except for Patrick Mahomes on his best day. I'm being 100% honest with that.
Yeah, look, everybody needs to be healthy, right? There are very few guys that can make this stuff happen when there's something less than 100% or at least the normal 100% of NFL quarterbacks once you get into the season. But think about what he's been able to do with the weapons that he's been given. When they finally surrounded him with the guys that he needed, namely an offensive line that was functioning, a top-level wide receiver in Cooper Kupp. Now, he did have that in Detroit with Calvin Johnson, but weapons, a head coach that would allow him to utilize his skills to the best of his ability. He went 1 for 1, right? This is not a, well, let's run it back, maybe a second. 1 for 1. There are not a lot of guys that can say that. You look at a guy like Prescott, and not to turn this into a Dak Prescott is a bum conversation, but does anybody have more weapons than Dak Prescott? Has anybody had a better wide receiving core? Has anybody had a more consistently high-performing offensive line? Has anybody had weapons at running back the way that Dak Prescott has? And they still keep tripping on their own feet year after year after year. Matthew Stafford is an incredibly skilled, talented, tough, smart quarterback. And when you look at this list, and there's only a couple of NFC guys there, I think this is the lane that allows you to be optimistic as a Rams fan, that you look around. Geno Smith, I don't know. You look at what's going on in Arizona, they're going to be probably pretty lousy. You look at San Francisco, I don't even know who their quarterback is. Is it going to be Purdy? Is it going to be Lance? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? I don't know what they're doing there. Kirk Cousins, use at your own risk. There just aren't a lot of great quarterbacks in that half of the draw. Danny Dimes, all these guys. That the lane for the Rams is we have the quarterback, we have the coach. If we can get a little lucky and stay a little healthy, we got a chance to do it. When I saw that list, that's the first thing that jumped out at me.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what jumped out at me is at this point in Stafford's career, he really has become criminally underrated. And I think what really jumps out at me is that Stafford is a guy, if he's healthy, you can plug him into any of these offenses and he's going to flourish. But can you do the same with Jalen Hurts, with Lamar Jackson? I mean, Jalen Hurts, of course, he was phenomenal. Guy 13 touchdowns, 800 rushing yards on top of what he was able to do. Lamar Jackson, a MVP winner. Josh Allen, he's mobile. He's got a cannon for an arm. Joe Burrow, the completion percentage, the way he throws those catchables, ball placements, just fantastic. But still, I think, Trevor Lawrence, the light really came on. But Matthew Stafford is a guy that I don't think takes a backseat to anyone when he's on his best day. You talk about Dak Prescott living off of his star on his helmet and his Cowboys reputation. Aaron Rodgers is a guy who really hasn't been elite for years now. Of course, he had the MVP season at age 39, but still, I think he's a guy who Stafford, if he's healthy, I think that I would take him on his best day. And for me, what I look at is if it's everything on the line, one game to play, they're all at 100%. They all have the same amount of talent around them. Hey, I think you've got to feel good about this, the fact that Stafford still is in this conversation after the year he had last year after dealing with those injuries.
No doubt. And I think the other, obviously offensive line, obviously weapons matter a great deal. But like I mentioned a second ago, I think the other part of this that's criminally underrated is who's in charge of your offense? Who's making the decisions? Who's calling plays? Who are you collaborating with? And I'm taking absolutely nothing away from a player like Patrick Mahomes, who is unreal. If you've been watching the Netflix series Quarterback, you just get a sense of just how special of a guy he really is. But he's got Andy Reid. Does anybody know more about what they're doing than Andy Reid does? You look at some of these guys that they're in these perfect positions, that this supreme talent, like a guy like Mahomes, lands in a place with a supreme brain like Andy Reid. Put Matthew Stafford with Sean McVay, you see what it is. You put a guy like Jalen Hurts with Nick Sirianni, it works incredibly well. You get somebody like Joe Burrow, you put him together with a guy in Cincinnati off of the Sean McVay staff, Zach Taylor. All of a sudden, these pieces start to fit really well together. Look at Justin Herbert, another guy here in LA. there might not be anybody more talented, but because Brandon Staley seems to kind of, go brain dead at the worst possible moments, that team comes unglued. It's not because Justin Herbert forgets what he's doing. It's because the rest of the team kind of goes in a weird direction. So as important as Stafford is, nearly as important as the fact that he's teamed up with Sean McVay.
For sure. And I think that's when you get greatness. When the stars align, you get the coaches, you get the players around him. I mean, Jordan had Pippen and Phil Jackson. If he was on the Clippers, probably would have been the same situation. Shohei Ohtani with the Angels, right? So you have to have the ancillary pieces. You have to have the great number 2 guy. I mean, Travis Kelce go down as one of, if not the best tight ends in history. They actually were better offensively when Tyreek Hill left with some of the pieces they made. And Andy Reid really is a transcendent generational coach as far as offensive play calling, one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, no question. Everything needs to be pretty good, but you need a couple of things to be very good. Quarterback, head coach are a really good spot to start, and then the offensive line. This is where the Rams, lane kind of breaks down a little bit, is with that offensive line. But who knows? Maybe get a little bit of an overperformance there, and that number 10 quarterback this season is a lot higher coming into next season.
And I like this. I like this chip on his shoulder, have something to prove. Matthew Stafford. He hears the trade rumors. I think he's going to go into this year with a fire that he hasn't had for years, something to prove and say, okay, I've still got it. So I'm definitely looking forward to the I've still got it season from Matthew Stafford.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think there is a little bit of, okay, you really?
That's Arthur Fist.
All right. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to show you. I'm going to remind you what I can do when I have the right pieces. We just got to make sure he has the right pieces.
Yeah, he's looking at all this stuff, the MJ last dance. I took that personally. We want that fire under Stafford this season. But coming up in our final segment, we're going to continue our countdown of the most important Rams heading into the 2023 season. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Another reminder, you can find us over on YouTube. So if you want to find the video version of the show, join the party on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and let us know, how do you feel about Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee heading into the 2023 season? So Travis, T-Raj, we're going to get down with this countdown, and we're going with number 11. We're going 11. I'm going Tyler Higbee. So Tyler Higbee, of course, had a career high in targets last season, had 620 yards, averaged 8.6 yards per catch. The second lowest of his career was a little bit deceiving because he had a lot of screen passes, a lot of short plays. This is a big year for Higbee. I think he's going to be vital because not a lot of proven tight ends behind him.
No, there aren't. The roster does not carry, a lot of optimism at that position beyond Higbee. Maybe you stumble into some guys along the way. I'm excited to see what it looks like. And I am fully aware all the everydayers out there are probably going to get ready to roll their eyes about what I'm about to say right here. It's about the offensive line. If the offensive line is good, Tyler Higbee can have a good year. If the offensive line is bad, Tyler Higbee becomes a 6th offensive lineman just to keep Matthew Stafford in one piece. That's what they had to do for a big chunk of last year because the O-line was so difficult to get consistency. It was so difficult to get protections that instead of using Higbee as an offensive weapon, you had to use him as an offensive lineman. We saw the Rams do something they have been really reluctant to do under Sean McVay, and that's go jumbo, 2 tight end sets. We saw some 3 tight end sets with them last year, and that wasn't so these guys could go out there and score touchdowns. It's so they could give John Wolford or Bryce Perkins or Baker Mayfield or Matthew Stafford a little bit of time back there. If the O-line is good, Higbee can have a big year. I think he's a really good player. We've seen him have some big games along the way, but he's got to get offensive line production for him to get good tight end production.
That's the key. That's going to be the North Star of this team is the offensive line. I think, too, might see some 12 personnel you're going to want to reestablish to run in a big way. I think where Higbee, the biggest thing is last year, kind of what stood out to me was just some uncharacteristic drops. I mean, he had 6 last year. That was twice as many as he had in any other season, only 1 fewer than the previous 3 years combined. So a little bit of a bar of soap season where it's just kind of slipping out there for Higbee. I think he cleans that up. But why I think he's so important to this offense is we're going to talk about Van Jefferson in a second, but right now there is a world where, hey, Higbee could be that number 2 option. We know number 1 is Kupp. There's no question about that. But you look at behind him, you got Hunter Long, who the Rams got in the Ramsey deal. You got Davis Allen. He's got that crazy catch radius out of Clemson. But, hey, he's going to be the starting tight end with an explosive quarterback and hopefully an explosive offense in a contract year with no established number 2 option. I think that's why he's so important to this team, because this could be a career year for Higbee. He could set himself up for a really nice payday.
Not to simplify it too much, D-Mac, but somebody's going to have to catch footballs that's not named Cooper Kupp, right? Somebody's going to have to do it. Kupp will get his. He's going to get his 90 or 100 catches. I'm sure that he's going to get his 10 or 12 touchdowns. I don't doubt that Cooper Kupp will be terrific, but you need a second guy. Quite frankly, you need a second and a third guy. And I know these are the 2 guys we're talking about right now, but I think you're right. I think that Higbee has a chance to be that number 2 guy, that number 2 offensive weapon behind Cooper Kupp in the passing game.
That is one of the big questions, is how much Stafford is going to rely on Cooper Kupp. We don't need Stafford to start his own podcast called Locked On Kupp, right? We need to have some other weapons he can go to, guys that he can trust, and hopefully Higbee is one of those guys. But then coming in at number 10 on our list, the aforementioned Van Jefferson. This is going to be a big year for Van Jefferson. I'm excited about the guy. Really almost a sink or swim season for him in this organization. Last year, of course, dealing with those injuries. 11 games, 9 starts, 44 targets, 24 receptions for 369 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 drop. But, hey, did have that big catch against the Raiders in that game with Baker Mayfield. But what's your overall outlook for Van Jefferson? I'm excited for the possibility of him this year with this opportunity that he has in front of him.
I think this is the year where we kind of decide what he is, right? That at this point in your career, somewhere in that 3rd or 4th season in the league, it's a little bit different for one guy than another guy, but somewhere in that 3rd or 4th year, I think it's when the league kind of decides, okay, you are a good player, you're a very good player, you're an excellent player, or you're a player that we could probably live without, and we're going to go try someone else, right? This is the point where you figure out, this is somebody that I want to keep around. This is somebody that helps my football team be better. I don't know where Van Jefferson fits in right there. I know he's not a bum. I know he's not a bust. I know he can play in the league, but is he somebody that you have to have? Is he somebody that is essential to what it is that you're doing? You don't have to be a Cooper Kupp, but I'll use him. I'll use a different former Ram as an example. Robert Woods. Robert Woods was never going to go be an all-pro. Robert Woods was never going to be a guy that was just absolutely killing you in fantasy football. But he brought so much value to your football team. He was tough. He blocked. He could run the ball. He ran. He had great hands. He was just this unbelievably versatile player, valuable player. Can Van Jefferson become a player like that, or is he going to be a guy that you keep winning? I just want a little bit more. This is the season that we're going to find out.
And that's a great starting point for Van Jefferson. Can you be that guy alongside Cooper Kupp? Because we know Cooper Kupp, top 5 wide receiver, but the unique thing about him is he's going to be lined up in the slot. So can Van Jefferson be that guy that takes the top off of the defense, just stretches the field, opens things up? So he has a clearly defined role within his role. And I also think, too, similar to Tyler Higbee, there's not a guy that's really going to hopefully challenge him. If someone's challenging him, that's definitely going to be a problem for this offense. If guys like Tutu Atwell, Ben Skoranek, Puka Nacua, DeMarcus Robinson, or Tyler Johnson, or even vying for that number 2 spot, that's not going to speak volumes about Van Jefferson's production or how he's looked early on in camp. But I think the fact, too, you bring up Robert Woods, this is the first time he's going to have that runway. There is no Robert Woods. There's no Odell Beckham Jr., no Allen Robinson. So a big opportunity for this former Florida Gator.
Yeah, this is his chance, right? You're not a rookie. You're not a second-year guy. You're relatively healthy. You've had some reps with the quarterback. You know the offensive system. It's show me. This is a show me year. Show me that you can do it. Show me you can be that guy. You don't have to play behind the guys that you just mentioned. Show me you can be a number 2 wide receiver in this league. No excuses. Come out. Do it. Everybody wins. Don't do it. We're going to go looking for somebody else.
By the way, in the Super Bowl, he actually did wear Florida Gator receivers gloves with a gator there. I wonder if that was some violation. I'm not trying to snitch on him here, but if he brings those back and has a big season. So Van Jefferson, we're expecting some big things from you this year. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. For Travis, you can follow him at Travis Rogers on Twitter. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.